Hey, Pretty Girl Club. So I just got back from doing my morning swim, and I was actually thinking about us and how apparently we have femininity privilege as well. By the way, welcome to Creepyoticals episode 1. Chrissy really shouldn't have messed with me because now I have created so many new series based off of the names that they are calling us in the Black empowerment spaces. And so in the Creepyoticals series, this is actually going to be a spin-off to what I talk about on Patreon and on my members page. I do a lot of people watching and studies where I kind of examine and observe both our community offline and other communities offline, and then I come back and I give intel and I kind of like speculate about what I think of all of the people that I see. And so this Creepy Articles series is going to be a gossip series. That's right, baby. It's going to be a diabolical summer. This is officially going to be my new gossip series where I will freely gossip about whoever and whatever I want to. And that also includes content creators if I want to. So gossip item number 1 is that the content creator Chrissy is beefing with this other content creator who I just became familiar with the other day. Her name is Samantha Cooker. And I noticed that they are beefing over men, of course, and over their views on relationships. And I actually usually don't care about stuff like this because this is more of a decentering YouTube channel. But the timing of them beefing and talking about relationships, and then also another person coming out and trying to critique my channel, somebody literally made a video analyzing my femininity. So I thought that was very interesting because I'm like, wait a minute, you can analyze someone's femininity online? I mean, I guess you can. I'm not saying that you can't. But this actually got me thinking because this is not the first time that I have heard someone critique the exotical space and kind of critique the types of women that are over in this space. So I have another video coming out about how I support diversity in the exotical community. And so not all of us are going to be super like feminine or whatever. Not all of us are going to be Kamala Harris. You know, some of us are going to be more like Ice Spice or like Cardi B. And so I try to create space for all of us, but I'm starting to speculate and I want to ask you guys, have you ever been stereotyped as being way more feminine than you actually are? Because one of the critiques that I've gotten is, oh, well, you know, some of these women that you're showing, those women aren't feminine enough. Or, you know, you're just trying to play into the feminine stereotype by showing princess images on your editing. And it's funny because when I was showing princess style images, you guys know that the reason I like princesses is because I have an internalized beauty standard that is based on abstractions. So my beauty standard is like princesses, fairies, mermaids, pixies, stuff like that. And I never thought about it like, oh, I'm enhancing my feminine privilege by showing women with hair bows. But this is very interesting because I started kind of studying the Black YouTube channels over the past week or so, and I've noticed that when I typed in femininity, I just typed it into YouTube just to see what would come up. I noticed that number 1, lots of Black women's YouTube channels came up. And then number 2, I noticed that all the femininity content was based around men or the male gaze or how to get a man to think that you're more feminine. And so that was also interesting. If I were to compare the average femininity content to my femininity content, I tend to make my content focus more around dark psychology. So that's why I actually use the term dark femininity. It's not supposed to be a spiritual term, but I've now changed it and I call it diabolicals or psychoticals. I changed it to something because I'm trying to capitalize off of the insults that people have thrown at us. But I've noticed that a lot of the other femininity content, especially when I examine Black femininity content, it really does revolve around the male gaze or like how men perceive you. And I'm starting to believe that a lot of unambiguous Black women online feel like they are lacking in feminine privilege or maybe have a problem with expressing their femininity. I've also noticed a pattern where a lot of Black content creators are talking about hygiene, kind of like the hygiene Olympics is what I've heard people call it, where they're talking about like how they take care of themselves, how they clean themselves. And it made me think about this femininity thing. It made me start to speculate and kind of think in my mind like, okay, is there a pattern to where a lot of women kind of feel this insecurity around their femininity as a whole? And then today, I actually came across another exotical channel. I can't remember her name, but if I find it, I will put it on the screen. But I came across another Exotical channel, and she did a whole 40-minute long analysis about how the beauty supply store is actually a representation of a lot of unambiguous women's insecurities. And it kind of got me thinking about how a lot of times women are purchasing beauty enhancements because they're trying to enhance their femininity as well. You know, they want other people to perceive them as feminine. So none of this is a problem. Obviously, I support femininity in whatever form you want to express it in, but it made me think, are exoticals, do we also have a form of feminine privilege? Because at this point, I genuinely believe we do. And the reason I'm saying that is because, number one, I noticed that when Chrissy made fun of us, she raised the pitch of her voice. You know, when she was mocking us, she was like, oh my God, I'm an exotical. We're just so beautiful. So she started talking like that. It's funny because I actually try to lower my voice a little bit when I talk on YouTube, because I feel like if my voice is super, super high pitched, it does sound a little bit annoying. That's just when I'm listening to myself. But that made me think of, wait, why is she like over feminizing us? And then another thing I thought about is how a lot of people perceive exoticals as having effortless beauty. So whether you have chocolate skin with like natural curls, or maybe you have lighter skin with 4C hair, I've noticed that you're still kind of perceived by Black women as being feminine. Because at this point, I've had so many Black women project femininity onto my channel and onto my imagery, to the point where I'm literally starting to believe that they associate our phenotypes and this space on YouTube with being like a more feminine space, or with having feminine privilege. And the reason I'm calling it feminine privilege is because I really didn't try. Like, I wasn't thinking about that when I started this channel, and I also wasn't even thinking about it when I was doing my images. I literally was just doing it based on my own, I guess, creativity and wanting to incorporate abstract beauty standards into my content. But out of curiosity, I decided to do a deep dive into kind of like the Black femininity content creators, just kind of watching some of their content, seeing what it's all about. And I've noticed that overwhelmingly, when it came to unambiguous Black women creating femininity content, it was all about how to look effortless. I feel like that's something that we just do on here already. But I felt like it was all about how to look effortless, how to do proper hygiene and stuff. Maybe like some grooming habits, and then also how to get the attention of like a wealthy non-Black man. And so at this point, I am convinced that exoticals also have femininity privilege. And I think part of that is because, especially let's say you're multicultural, you're multiracial, and you grew up in the suburbs, so you grew up around upper middle class non-Black people, and you have a partially non-Black ancestry, well then you absolutely have a privilege in that area. Just culturally, you culturally would have a privilege because that's a part of your background. And another thing that I found interesting was how Chrissy said that she has not dated Black men in a very long time, so she is divested. I think divestment was supposed to mean that you date all races of men, but in her case, she said that she specifically has not dated Black men in a long time, and that she dates white men and Hispanic men. So I found that interesting, being that I myself am someone with both of those things in my background. So it's interesting how an unambiguous Black content creator, she promotes femininity, and mostly femininity in the eyes of non-Black men. She dates white men and Hispanic men, but then has beef with a woman who has not only a multi-ethnic background and a multicultural background, but you know how they say like, oh, Black men are our men, like Black women will say that. Okay, well, I technically have 3 people groups. So Black people are my people, white people are my people, Latin American, Hispanic people are my people. So now what? How you like them apples? And I think that a part of the reason why people perceive us as having feminine privilege is because if you are, let's say you are part white, and maybe you happen to date white men, I feel like people perceive that as a privilege because in their mind, they want to date a white man. And I also got to thinking about the whole Nara Smith thing, because I do feel like unambiguous Black women perceive Nara Smith as having feminine privilege. And the reason I'm saying that is because whenever I have watched a Black content creator kind of analyze Nara Smith, or they talk about desirability. First of all, let's talk about that term, desirability. Okay, desirable in the eyes of who? Have you ever noticed that they never talk about who you're trying to be desirable in front of? Well, usually it's a man. It's some sort of man, whether it's a Black man or a non-Black man. Most of the time it's non-Black men, because I've noticed a lot of them online, they're now obsessed with white male validation or proximity to whiteness. So if you look at Nara Smith, she would actually incite a lot of jealousy. By the way, this is all speculation because this is the Creepyoticals series. So I'm just speculating. I'm just spreading gossip, honestly. But I will say one of the things that I've been kind of secretly thinking is, okay, are a lot of black women jealous because Nara Smith is married to a rich white man who is a model? You know, he's considered to be attractive probably in their eyes if you are one of those black women who really wants a rich white guy. So, in my opinion, I feel like Nara Smith is everything that these black femininity channels are trying to convince unambiguous black women to become. Because if you look at like Pink Pill or even Chrissy's old content or other black femininity content creators, they really talk about social strategies to get you in the room with a man like Lucky Blue Smith. Or they want to try to get you in the room with a man like, you know, that guy who said that black women are for grown-ups? I know he didn't really say that, but I forgot his name. I feel like a lot of the black femininity content creators, they're actually trying to teach their women to social climb like an exotical. And I actually have no problem with that, but I mean, who better to learn from than the Exoticals themselves? So come on over to the Exotical channels. We all know that you're watching us. If we as a group of women are so fake and have a superiority complex, and if we're so diabolical, then why are women trying to act like us? Why would women want to take on the same behaviors of the women that they claim to be so much better than in terms of morals? I mean, if we have bad morals and you know, for some of these content creators, I remember one of them, she tried to imply that Cassie was a plotter, like Cassie and Diddy. She tried to imply that Cassie was basically just trying to social climb. And by the way, maybe Cassie was, but even so, I noticed that that content creator, she basically made fun of Cassie for getting abused. And they often tell us, well, you got the same black man. But notice how they don't acknowledge when an exotical gets a quote unquote man that they would want. And once again, this is all just very extremely male centered. I mean, I've had people randomly say that this channel is male centered. Forget the fact that there's a 25-part decentering men series. Forget the fact that I have ran off thousands of male subscribers on this channel to the point where, according to my analytics, 90% of my subscribers are women. So no, forget all of that. We have to be male-centered. So I've noticed that a lot of this is actually projection. And so at this point, after I kind of was speculating and being a creepyotical and, you know, creeping on all these YouTube pages and kind of just thinking about it when I was at the pool this morning, I am convinced that a lot of women have a stereotype in their minds that women like Nara Smith or women like that woman who married the billionaire, that they have a quote-unquote feminine privilege. And I believe that a lot of them subconsciously associate feminine privilege with proximity to whiteness. And when I say proximity to whiteness, I'm not even talking about the woman's phenotype. I'm talking about your dating options. Because I've noticed a lot of the colorism conversation is it's very male-centered. Because usually when they say that somebody's a colorist, they will talk about dating. Another thing I noticed is with the Pop the Balloon series, which I just started watching yesterday. So I heard about this series from Blunt Girly's channel. Shout out to Blunt Girly. If you're an unambiguous woman watching this, I recommend following Blunt Girly's channel. She has a fantastic channel. But anyway, she is actually the one who first talked about this. So I had never heard of this whole Pop the Balloon thing until she talked about it. So I was being a creepyotical and I was lurking in the Pop the Balloon comment section. And I saw a whole bunch of black women in there talking about how the men were being colorist because they didn't pop their balloons when the woman was light-skinned. But if you actually watch that series, you will see multiple timestamps where there are black women who say, oh, you know, you're my type because you're tall and light-skinned. Or, you know, there will even be women saying, oh, my type is chocolatey. Or even light-skinned men who say, oh, I like dark-skinned chocolate women. And I didn't see any comments where they were saying, hey, that's colorist because, you know, you're pedestalizing just this one skin tone. You're only pedestalizing chocolate skin. You're not pedestalizing golden skin. So I didn't see anybody say that in the comment section. So this was another thing that kind of made me think about all of this talk about femininity. I really do feel like a lot of women who have inferiority complexes, I believe that a part of the inferiority complex is in regards to their femininity, because femininity is different than being beautiful or pretty privilege. I think that they overlap. I think that there's intersectionality, But when I think of femininity, what I'm thinking of is more so your personality type. I am actually thinking of interactions with men. So I can see why they tend to bring up dating and stuff. I kind of think of like feeling the freedom to wear different colors and stuff. So you know those women who they really feel insecure about wearing makeup, or they feel insecure about wearing pink, or certain things they try not to wear because they think it's too hyper feminine. You know those cool girls where they have this attitude of like, oh my god, I hate pink. Oh fuck pink. Oh, that's too girly. Ew, that looks ugly. Ew, that's cringy. You know those types of women? I really feel like a lot of women do secretly struggle with their femininity at this point, because it keeps coming up whenever I see people critiquing this channel, or just in general when I observe the competitive nature of some of these women online. Like they'll randomly bring up people's skin tones and then they will tie it to their femininity. Even when Queen Chama did that video about Ekane, she randomly started critiquing Ekane's femininity. And then when I saw another black woman content creator, I think she has like 1 subscriber or something. I can't even remember her name. But when I saw another black content creator, she wanted to examine my femininity. I thought that was interesting. I'm like, why is it that whenever it's a light-skinned woman, or, some sort of ambiguous woman, some sort of multiracial type of woman, people randomly bring up her femininity. They randomly want to critique her femininity. Like Ekane. Oh, you're not feminine enough, or she's not acting feminine because she shaved her head. And it's like, well, why were you even expecting Ekane to be feminine? Isn't she the one who talks about having bacterial vaginosis and stuff? So like, why are you randomly expecting her to be the epitome of femininity? And so what privilege really means is people put you on a pedestal, or they kind of associate you with positive qualities. Obviously, I believe that if you're a woman and you want to be feminine, then femininity can be a privilege. And so at this point, I am speculating, after creeping in the comment sections and on multiple femininity YouTube channels, I am speculating that not only does this channel have feminine privilege naturally, just without me even trying it, like without me really putting in effort on that type of content, not only does this channel have a form of feminine privilege, but I feel like Exoticals as a whole, regardless of complexion or phenotype, have feminine privilege. And I think part of it has to do with us being seen as pretty, being the pretty girls. And then I think that you can actually play into your feminine privilege by being very feminine. And whatever that means to you, by the way. Another thing I've noticed, though, is when I was creeping on a lot of women's channels, like in their comment section, a lot of them seem to think that femininity is a monolith. So they'll be like, oh, Ekane, she's not feminine because she's from the hood. And it's like, wait, you do know that like people can be poor and they can be feminine. They can be from the hood and feminine. You can be Southern and feminine. In my opinion, femininity is something where it's like, okay, you were just born with a vagina. And I feel like anything beyond that is really people talking about feminine privilege, which means that other people treat you as if you are very feminine. And so when I started thinking about that, I was kind of speculating, and I was like, okay, well, what would feminine privilege look like in my everyday life? And then I thought about when I was walking to the gym yesterday, this one random white guy, he ran to the front door so he can hold the front door for me. So like he saw me coming, and then he made sure to hold the door. And I was thinking, I'm just going to the gym, dude, like whatever. And so, but I actually think that that's a part of feminine privilege. I think if I were to describe what it is, it would be stuff like men going out of their way to try to hold the door for you. Maybe men even fighting to hold the door for you. I think of maybe people like giving you a lot of compliments on your femininity. So for example, on my Patreon, I'm currently doing an experiment where I am wearing heels every day for 30 days. And I'm doing it for multiple reasons. Number one is because heels naturally correct my posture. And number two is I kind of want to test out and play around with and experiment with my pretty privilege. And I really do believe that pretty privilege and feminine privilege are kind of intersectional. They kind of overlap. And so really quick, I pulled up the definition of feminine. It says having qualities or an appearance traditionally associated with women or girls. So what's most important to me is actually the synonyms. So if you look at the synonyms of feminine, it's womanly, ladylike, girlish, female, soft, delicate. And even if I'm thinking about like dark skin exoticals, for example, if you have curly hair, have you ever noticed how people tend to call curly hair soft? So they don't realize that by calling it soft, they're actually associating it with femininity. Because if you look at the definition right here, a synonym, meaning a word that can be used interchangeably, is soft. It also says gentle, tender, graceful, refined, modest, girly. So when I think of gentleness and how that associates with femininity, one thing I've noticed about a lot of Black content creators who critique my channel, such as Chrissy, I've noticed that Chrissy is actually not gentle in her delivery with her own subscribers. I've noticed that, like, she tends to lack a lot of patience whenever people ask her questions. You know, she tends to get very upset and very, like, impatient with people. I've seen other Black content creators do that as well. I don't really feel the need to mention everybody's name because I can't think of all their names, but I have seen some people where they immediately get annoyed when you ask them questions. But then if you look over here at the Exotical YouTube channels, even the way that we run our YouTube channels, I've noticed that we don't mind explaining ourselves. You know, we don't mind making content or making an entire series to explain a particular talking point. We don't mind answering questions and then making a whole video response to answer those questions. So if you think about that, I actually associate that with gentleness, kind of having a gentle response. And don't get me wrong, we like to clap back. I actually love to clap back as well. But I have a time and a place when I clap back versus when I'm just like hanging out with the pretty girls. And so I actually do believe at this point that we also have feminine privilege. So on top of the pretty privilege, we also have the privilege of being perceived as feminine, or at least I would say in the eyes of a lot of unambiguous Black women, I do feel like a lot of them subconsciously perceive us as being feminine. And I'm not saying that they are not feminine, because I have never really judged other women's femininity. I guess that's kind of like, I don't want to say it's weird, but I guess I've just never thought about it, because femininity, I always viewed that as something that was innate to all women, but apparently for some women, they feel like it's not. Another thing that I've noticed though is that a lot of the Black women who think that they're not feminine, a lot of those women have been listening too much to Black men, because the only people that I've ever heard say that Black women are not feminine have been those red pill manosphere Black men. And because I haven't watched any manosphere content in years, I don't even know if they still exist or if they're still making content. So I have no idea. But because I don't listen to them, I personally have never viewed an entire group of women as just being less feminine. And so another thing that I'm kind of speculating about is, you know, these women who are making all these femininity videos, or they feel like they have to teach their subscribers how to be feminine. I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, who told them that they weren't feminine? Like, who has convinced them that somehow they are less feminine or that they need to work on their femininity? Is it their fathers? I mean, a lot of them have said that their fathers are absent. So is it the absence of a male that makes them feel less feminine? Because for me personally, I feel feminine whether there's a guy around or not. So I was kind of speculating about that. I was being a creepyotical, and I was, you know, kind of going through all the different comment sections and stuff. And one of the main agendas I've noticed with a lot of the femininity content is the whole agenda is to get a man like Lucky Blue Smith. It's to become the Nara Smith. You know, you want to be the unambiguous version of Nara Smith because you view that as the epitome of femininity, or at least when I was creeping on the channels, you know, when they were describing kind of the ultimate goal, they were describing like a Nara Smith style woman. Even if you look at the content of a fellow multiracial woman, Shira Seven, who has an African American and Puerto Rican background, even if you look at her content, a lot of her audience is, you know, unambiguous mono dark-skinned Black women. And if you think about even her talking points, it really is kind of more similar to maybe like a Nara Smith, or maybe even like sugaring. I know that she talks about sugaring and stuff. So I just thought that that was very interesting. And I've noticed that for a lot of women who are hyper competitive, a lot of those women seem to have this thing where it's like femininity is a competition. And so another thing that I was thinking about, I was being a creepyotical, and I started examining my own life experiences. And I started thinking about if any women in my life have ever talked down on my femininity, or maybe they associated me with femininity and then they talk shit about it. And I thought about it, and actually, yes. I have had women in the past of all races talk shit about me liking the color pink. I love the color pink partially because I do associate it with femininity, and I think femininity that's positive. Like, why wouldn't I be able to wear a certain color? Another thing that I've noticed is whenever I look back on times where other people have expressed jealousy towards me, or if I think about all of you guys' stories, all the exoticals who have told their story times, oftentimes the jealousy does have something to do with your perceived femininity. So, for example, people discouraging you from wearing makeup, they discourage you from dressing up, they discourage you from wearing skirts and dresses, they discourage you from kind of losing weight and showing off your curves because they associate curves with femininity. And so it really did get me thinking. Another thing that I discovered when being a creepyotical and kind of searching through YouTube and searching through Lipstick Alley and Reddit, I've noticed that a lot of Black content creators, they use that phrase level up or leveling up. And whenever you actually click on the video or listen to the content, it's all about femininity. And so it also made me start to speculate, oh, okay, so is the reason that some women are jealous of your femininity, is it because they associate your femininity with leveling up or with having a higher chance of leveling up? And also, let's think about this, exoticals. What is your definition of leveling up? Because I've noticed for some women, their definition of leveling up is basically becoming like Nara Smith, marrying a rich white man. You know, you get to make TikToks and look cute. You're a model. You have pretty privilege. You have a man who adores you or kind of puts you on a pedestal. He pedestalizes you. I've noticed that that is really at the core of a lot of the femininity talking points. And so with that being said, that totally made sense as to why people would be threatened by this space on YouTube. Like, that totally made sense as to why other content creators or just women in general don't like us having our own space over here, because they associate femininity and all that stuff with like leveling up even further. And if a woman already has an inferiority complex and then she already feels like you think you're better or like you think you're more feminine, if you increase your femininity even more, or you increase your quote unquote privileges even more, then that's even more of a way to piss that person off. And so it's all starting to come together for me, kind of like the vitriol that people would have against this type of space, or us kind of celebrating ourselves, because I really do think that some women on a subconscious level, they associate your femininity with you thinking you're better than them. So yes, something as simple as wearing a bow in your hair or showing yourself in a cute outfit with some ribbons in your hair, apparently that means that I think I'm better, or that means that I think that we look better than other women because I show us looking like princesses. When in reality, I simply enjoy princesses and Barbies and pixies and fairies and any sort of ethereal creature, anything that reminds me of my childhood, because I associate my beauty with like healing my inner child. So I've talked about that on the Pretty Privilege series. And a part of healing my inner child and satisfying my inner child is by interacting with princesses in some way. So I know that like in real life, I may not interact with a princess, but I can dress like a princess, or I can put on a little cute ribbon that reminds me of a princess. But if you think about it, princesses have feminine privilege. They do. They're seen as very feminine, like the puffy sleeves and like the lace and the ribbons and stuff. And then I've noticed that as a humbling tactic, I remember one thing that like Chrissy said. She said, oh, exoticals, you guys don't look like that. You guys don't look like any of those images that you show. She was talking about my images that I show, kind of these women with ribbons in their hair. And I'm thinking to myself, all I'm showing is literally just women with 4C hair with a ribbon on it. Like, what do you mean we don't look like that? There are plenty of women who have 4C hair who wear ribbons on their hair. Like, I never saw it as a big deal. But if you are a woman who has a scarcity mindset, like when it comes to femininity, or if you don't feel confident enough to show your 4C hair in a messy bun and putting a ribbon on it, which I think is cute, but I've noticed that some women, they don't think that you're allowed to have a messy bun if you have type 4 hair. They think that, you have to slick it down or whatever. But I've noticed that some women, they genuinely are insecure, or they have an inferiority complex about their own femininity, which is crazy to me, because I feel like, wait a minute, you were born as a woman. Like, what do you mean you're not feminine? And I get it when it comes to personality and all that, but I feel like that is more so feminine privilege as opposed to, just being a woman. And so it makes me think that, yes, we actually have another privilege. And so now I am going to acknowledge that privilege, which is apparently feminine privilege, because so many people have automatically associated this space with being feminine or with promoting femininity. And so, I mean, I think that's awesome. I'm so glad that they have now made me aware of yet another privilege that we get to stack. And so I started to think about different examples of how to kind of measure your feminine privilege in real life, or how to kind of like the ways that I have felt that I've been perceived as feminine. And I guess when I thought about it, I was thinking about the whole door holding thing, because, you know, some women get the door closed on them. Like, I've heard women say that they feel invisible, or that like guys let the doors close on them. Something else that happened that I will never forget, and it really did make me question. So I was being a creepyotical at the airport, actually. So I was getting off of a plane, and you know how like when you land on the plane, it's very annoying because you have to stand in the line, you have to wait for everybody to get their bags from the overhead compartment, and then, you know, get out of the plane. So I noticed that every single time that I've been in the plane, if I am trying to get my bag from the overhead, if there's a tall white guy behind me, he's always been white. It's never been a black guy or anything like that. I think it's partially because they just weren't on the planes. But I've noticed that anytime there's any sort of man behind me, if he sees me kind of struggling to get my bag, or I'm trying to find it, he will just grab my bag for me, especially if he's tall. If he's about 6 feet tall or above, he will grab his bag. And I will never forget, there was one time where I was standing in the line. It was taking a long time. And there was actually an unambiguous girl. There was a little unambiguous girl. She was trying to reach up to get the bag out of the overhead compartment. There was a 6'1" white guy who was literally right behind her. He was 1 foot behind her. He could have reached his arm up and got the bag for her so that the line could get moving. And I remember I actually got pissed off, because I was thinking, why the fuck is this guy not just getting her bag for her? Guys always get the bags for her. He's not being a gentleman. What is wrong with him? And I actually realized that my thought process, I was actually thinking from a place of privilege. That could have been a privilege that I had, of, you know, always having a guy or some random stranger being willing to help me carry a bag or get a bag. I had never thought until that moment. I had never thought that there were women out there where if you drop something, nobody's going to help you pick it up. Or if you're stuck at the airport trying to get your bag, that people would rather stand in the line and hold up the entire airplane than to help you get your bag. And so I consider that to be what I would call maybe like some sort of feminine privilege. I don't know, because I wouldn't call that guy racist. I'm not saying he's racist because he wouldn't help her get her bags. He's not required to help anyone, but I would just call that potentially some form of, I guess, feminine privilege, if guys are naturally having a desire to help you, or to especially use their strength to help you. And so that's something that I had never thought about until today. And by the way, everything I'm saying on here, this is all speculative. I'm just kind of gossiping and just kind of sharing my thoughts. On this channel in general, we do a lot of thinking out loud. We do a lot of speaking the unspoken. So I don't know why that guy didn't get her bag out of the overhead compartment. Maybe I'm just entitled. I think that maybe I could be thinking from a place of entitlement, because anytime I've had a problem getting a bag, especially if there's a 6'1" white guy right there, then yes, he will get my bag for me. But I never thought of that as a privilege, or, you know, I thought that that was just a part of being a woman. I thought that any woman would have her bag picked up for her. Another thing that I was doing when I was being a creepyotical, I was looking on some channel. It was some sort of femininity style channel, and she was talking about how wearing dainty jewelry, kind of small, tiny jewelry pieces, how that increases your femininity. And by the way, I don't disagree with that. I think that, you know, you can use anything to increase your beauty. I mean, so I fully support using dainty jewelry, whatever. But I noticed, I thought about it, and I was like, I'm not really into dainty jewelry. And then I really deeply thought about it, and I was like, well, why not? And I was thinking, well, it's because it's just not as noticeable. I mean, it's just small. You know, like if I am tall and I have long arms, long legs, a long neck, you know, I love sparkle and shine, and I love like chrome looks and like monochromatic outfits, very bright colors, very loud colors. And I started to think about it, and I was thinking, is there a chance that some people only wear dainty jewelry because that's all they feel comfortable wearing? Because I know that for me personally, there is no piece of jewelry that I feel like, oh, I can't wear that. You know, like that's going to make me look ugly. That's going to make me look less pretty. If I wear a chunky bracelet versus a small dainty bracelet, I'm going to look less feminine if I wear a wooden bracelet, you know how they have those big wooden bracelets? I see them on a lot of bohemian women or kind of Afrocentric looking women. I don't associate any type of jewelry with being less feminine. I just feel like as long as you style it well, as long as your jewelry kind of goes with your outfit, then you're good. You're fine. It could be a small piece of jewelry. It could be a large piece of jewelry. But I thought about this. I was like, well, why is it that I keep hearing women say, just like dainty jewelry? Is it because they are afraid of like maybe their outfits being too loud or being like clashing, kind of trashy looking? Because that's something else I noticed when I was creeping on a lot of Black femininity content creators. I noticed one of the things they were telling Black women was essentially you cannot wear certain things. Like, if you wear really big jewelry, like that's bad. Or if you wear a combination of certain things that like it's going to make you look masculine. And because I don't associate Blackness with masculinity, I don't have those insecurities. So I thought about it. I was like, I just wear whatever I want to wear as far as accessories. Like if I want to wear a big ass ribbon in my hair, like a big gigantic ass ribbon, I don't care if my hair would have been 4C. I will wear a huge ribbon if I want to. I've never thought of it as, oh my God, you can't wear that. You have to follow these rules. This looks too childish. You can't wear this. You can't wear that. And so it started to make me speculate and wonder, like, okay, do some of these women kind of feel like they need to box themselves in, almost as if they have to constantly go for kind of this old money look? I don't want to call it a grandma look because that's mean, but I can't think of any other look to call it. Like almost like you can only wear certain types of jewelry, you can only wear certain types of clothing, you can't really be carefree. Because when I think about my femininity and my beauty and stuff, I don't really restrict myself because I feel like I get to be carefree. So if I want to wear a ribbon, I can wear a ribbon. No, it's not because I'm trying to show that I'm better than you and that's why I put ribbons in my hair. No, it's just because I am being creative and, I just think it looks cute, especially if you have type 4 hair. I think it actually looks gorgeous. That's why I use it so much on this channel. It has nothing to do with, oh, I'm trying to flex, I'm flexing my beauty on you. But the fact that people even view femininity as a flex to begin with, it makes me question whether or not they feel like they have it. Because I feel like my femininity is abundant. And so apparently that is actually a privilege though. Apparently it's a privilege to feel like you're naturally feminine, like you are inherently feminine, like you're feminine with makeup, without makeup, with big jewelry, with small jewelry, with a t-shirt on, with a dress on. So that's what is making me think that at this point, I do believe that we also have femininity privilege. And so what do you ladies think? That's what I learned from being a Creepyotical over the past couple of days and kind of lurking on random people's comment sections, kind of lurking on Reddit and Lipstick Alley and stuff. So what do you ladies think? Do you feel like people perceive you as more feminine? Do you feel like some people are insecure about their femininity and so they punish you for yours? Or do you feel like whenever you dress quote unquote more feminine, that people view it as you think you're better than them or you're trying to flex on them somehow? Even if you're not, even if you're literally just like having fun wearing makeup or something, they literally view it as, oh, she's competing with me. She's trying to outshine me. What do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay creepy, ladies.